Question. Hi there, Kim. You mentioned from time to time how you came across a book when you were young that sparked your interest in spirituality. I had a similar experience in my early 20s. I am now 70. The book was The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran, and I wondered if you have ever read this book, and if so, what your thoughts are on it. Later I found a recording where parts of the book were set to music and narrated by Richard Harris. Your teachings have confirmed to me the essence of this beautiful book. You continue to make a huge impact on me every day as I slowly make my way back home. Yeah, well, what I have mentioned in several videos is that the first book that really made me aware that there's a spiritual path was Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And the reason for this is that in there he describes his own path and how he followed the spiritual path and some of the insights he came to. And he also describes that there is a long tradition in India for people walking this spiritual path. So this was the big eye-opener for me. But actually, what I haven't mentioned before is that the first, we might say, spiritual book that I found, and I found that at the age of, I think I was 16, I was in high school, and there was a classmate of mine in high school who read this book, and it was called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And it's sort of a fictional book about a seagull who can't fit in with the flock. So he's always out experimenting with how to fly better and this and that. And in the end, he even meets some ascended seagulls that help him grow further, because the idea is that by setting himself apart from the breakfast flock, he is now contacted by these more advanced gulls. So it's a metaphor for the spiritual path. It's a metaphor for what the Ascended Masters say: when a student is ready, the teacher appears. But it's really up to the student to make himself ready. And I read that when I was 16, and it was very profound for me in the sense that it didn't give me the longing for spirituality, because I'd had that all my life. But it sort of reinforced the longing. The problem with Jonathan Livingston Seagull was, where do you go from there? I mean, give me something concrete I can study or I can practice. Right? It's like it inflames the longing, and then it kind of leaves you hanging. And actually, at about the same time I found Yogananda's book when I was 18, I also found The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran, because I found this TM movement, and many people in Transcendental Meditation had read The Prophet. And it was also a good book that I got a lot out of. But again, it was a little bit like Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Where do you go from there? You know, when you have read The Prophet, is there something further you can study mentioned in the book? Is there some practice you can do that's mentioned? No, it kind of leaves you hanging a little bit, right? And then another set of books that I found shortly after I'd found TM was the Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding. That talks about an expedition in the 1800s. Western scientists went to India and Tibet. They met these advanced yogis and masters who could do all kinds of supernatural feats. And it also had a profound impact, or it is inspirational to read, but it didn't really tell you where to go. What I will say, though, that the book introduced the concept of Ascended Masters. There's one of the books where the expedition goes to this remote temple high up in the mountains, and there's a group of people there that are praying, and suddenly Jesus and Mother Mary appear to them as light beings and give some teachings. And that really resonated with me. But again, where do you then go from there? So what I'm saying is, what really did it for me was that at the same time I found Autobiography of a Yogi and The Prophet, I found Transcendental Meditation, because here was a practice and here was something to study. And then, as I've described, after a while I got sort of dissatisfied with that. And part of the reason I got dissatisfied with TM was that I felt it didn't go high enough. And I had seen in these Life and Teachings of the Master of the Far East, I had sensed that there must be these teachers that are not in the physical body. And Yogananda also mentions this a little bit in his book. So this was really what I wanted. This was really what I always wanted. And this was in the early 80s that I finally found the Zen Master Teachings. Or they found me, however you look at it. Go back to the question. I think The Prophet is a great book, very inspirational, but as I said, where do you go from there? And it requires, to me, in order to really engage in the spiritual path, you have to find something you can continue to study, and you need to find a spiritual practice, because you need those two legs in order to make progress: study and practice.